On Friday, Donald Trump will meet Vladimir Putin in Anchorage in Alaska. Lots of alliteration there. The first face-to-face meeting between a sitting US president and a Russian president since the war began. And this would be momentous enough, but what makes it politically combustible is that the Ukrainian president, Mr. Zelensky, the leader of the country whose very survival is at stake, and the country that was invaded by the aggressive power, will not be there. Instead, there will be a makeshift Zoom compromise, a virtual summit the day before, where Zelensky will appear alongside European leaders, NATO Secretary General and Trump, in the hope of influencing the real discussion that follows. Trump has been remarkably open about his vision for peace. He sees territorial swaps as inevitable, even desirable, and that alone is a gift to the Kremlin. By excluding Ukraine from the table, he signals that the negotiations are not between invader and invaded, but between two great powers carving up someone else's land. And the White House is framing Alaska as a listening exercise, but in diplomacy, who is in the room is itself a decision, and this sends a clear message, and it's one that Trump is too stupid or too arrogant to have understood. Zelensky's had been unequivocal, and rightly so. Ukraine will not cede Donbass or any other occupied territory without a referendum, and the constitution forbids changing borders by force. In the early 90s, there was a referendum, and every oblast in Ukraine voted to remain in Ukraine. And by excluding Ukraine from the table, Trump signals that the negotiations are take precedence over any act, over any decision by the people. And his warning, Zelensky's warning is simple: give up the Donbass and it becomes a springboard for the next Russian offensive. He points to Crimea as the textbook case. Annexed in 2014, then used as a launch pad for the full-scale invasion in 2022. He calls Alaska a personal victory for Putin. Proof that Russia's leader is back on US soil shaking hands with the president. While the diplomatic theatre plays out, Russian troops have launched one of their sharpest advances in a year, making sudden gains near Dobrofilia and threatening to encircle Pokrovsk. This is not coincidence. Moscow is creating a narrative of momentum ahead of Friday's meeting to pressure Trump into concessions. And for Ukraine, holding ground is not just military necessity, it's political survival. The Europeans, too, have been sidelined from the Alaska summit. Leaders from Berlin to Warsaw to London are repeating the mantra that peace cannot be decided without Ukraine, but they are watching uneasily from the Zoom gallery. Only Viktor Orban, Putin's closest EU ally, has broken ranks. But he is a bit of a rank breaker, a bit of a ranker. And German Chancellor Merz has scrambled to host Wednesday's virtual meeting, hoping to get Trump on record before he sits down with Putin. The fear is plain: a peace that locks in Russia's gains will not end the war. It will move the front line westward. This is not the first time that a war victim has been excluded from its supposed resolution. Munich in 1938, Czechoslovakia was not present when Britain, France, Germany and Italy decided to hand over the Sudetenland to Hitler. Yalta in 1945, Poland's fate was largely settled without free Polish leaders at the table. The Minsk agreements of 2014 and 2015 that so many YouTubers go on about. But Zelensky isn't honouring the Minsk agreements were forced on Ukraine. They were ostensibly about ceasefires, but they were structured to bake in Russian leverage and Crimea, leaving Ukraine with a frozen conflict and Moscow with a veto power over its sovereignty. All three produced the same result. The aggressor regrouped and came back for more. By meeting Putin first, Trump gains maximum personal control over the process and maximum theatrical impact. He can present any subsequent virtual call with Zelensky as magnanimity. rather than necessity. But this sequencing matters. It allows Putin to define the baseline before Ukraine even speaks. Wednesday's virtual session is no substitute for presence in Alaska. It is, however, a chance for Zelensky and Europe to align their positions, to remind Trump that US credibility depends on resisting the withdrawing of borders by force, and to make the political cost of betraying Ukraine clear. The question is whether that message will outweigh the lure of a deal with Putin that Trump can sell to his domestic base as ending Europe's war on his terms. This is not just about Donbass. If Alaska produces an agreement that rewards aggression, it will embolden Putin to move again, perhaps against Kharkiv, Dnipro, or even NATO's eastern flank. It will embolden every autocrat who seeks borders as malleable, and it will fracture the transatlantic alliance, replacing the principle of collective defence with transactional bargaining over someone else's sovereignty. Excluding Ukraine from a summit about Ukraine is not just bad optics, it's bad strategy. Wars do not end well when the victim's voice is absent. A just and lasting peace requires the aggressor to be contained, the victim to be empowered, and the allies to be united. And without that, Alaska risks joining Munich and Minsk in the archive of agreements that solve nothing, made the next war inevitable.